Was that the president was said to have completely made up the tariff numbers other countries charge the U.S. He said the U.S. was charging those countries half of what they charge us, but his assertion bore little resemblance to the real tariffs other countries charge, most trade experts said. Instead, the White House used a formula few had seen before based on the trade deficit that caused most to scratch their heads. So this tariff policy looks like it's basically resting on made-up numbers.
Donald Trump just got verbally body slammed on live TV by Steve Leisman. Yes, the calm CNBC guy with the Wall Street graphs. Except this time, he came armed with receipts, rage, and a PhD in no more BS. Buckle up, because this roast session belongs in the presidential burn book. The president's tariff measures were worse than expected and deepened the already alarming stagflation outlook for the U.S. economy.
This is what you get. I mean, somebody needs to turn to the camera and tell the president to stop. I mean, he is messing with the foundation of this country. He's messing with the foundation of the economy. He's messing with America's place in the global financial system.
Scott Lincecum of the Cato Institute called Trump's tariffs totally detached from reality, more complex, more onerous, more devastating than even the worst projections. In short, it's not tariffs, it's economic sabotage in a MAGA hat. Steve Leisman, the financial journalist equivalent of your disappointed accountant dad, but with fewer sighs and more verbal flamethrowers.
You cannot dismiss some probability that the president will fire the Fed chair. People say, oh, it's not going to happen. I said, well, we thought he was going to follow the Supreme Court. We thought he was not going to necessarily withhold X billions of dollars from Harvard. So it's all of the same piece, in that you cannot relax and you cannot bet on a team where the captain is hitting the ball into his own net.
Donald Trump just got verbally body slammed on live TV by Steve Leisman. Yes, the CNBC guy with the calm voice and Wall Street graphs. Except this time, he came armed with receipts, rage, and a PhD in no more BS. Buckle up. This roast session is one for the presidential burn book.
The president's tariff measures were worse than expected and deepened the troubling stagflationary outlook for the U.S. economy. Scott Lincecum of the Cato Institute called the tariffs just totally detached from reality. They are more complex and onerous than I was expecting, he said. Lincecum and others say 40 to 50% tariffs, they're not tariffs. They essentially will shut down trade from those countries. And most had serious issues with how the president appeared to make up the tariff level he says other countries charge the U.S.
Didn't just criticize Trump's economic plan. He torched it. Systematic, clinical, devastating. Think a shark attack, but with pie charts. This is what you get, Leisman seethed, almost shaking with frustration. Someone needs to turn to the camera and tell the president to stop. He's messing with the foundation of this country. He's messing with the foundation of the economy. He's messing with America's place in the global financial system. Let's break it down. Trump's latest economic fantasy, a 10% blanket tariff and a 60% tariff on Chinese goods. Not small tweaks, these are sledgehammers. As Leisman pointed out, Trump essentially made up the numbers he's using to justify the tariffs, literally invented them, pulled them out of thin air, based not on real-world data, but on some fever dream math involving trade deficits divided by vibes and multiplied by ego. CNBC's analysts weren't confused. They were horrified. Economists across the spectrum started firing off emails like alarm bells. Where did these numbers come from? How does this make any sense? The consensus? It doesn't.
Jamie Dimon and David Solomon and Brian Moynihan, where are the leaders of our financial community calling on the president to stop this business about trying to fire the Fed chair? And you see what you get here in the markets, right? I think these people they're the leaders of the financial community. They have a ton at stake, and I think they have to step.
Trump's math isn't economics. It's economic fan fiction. Meanwhile, Leisman, usually composed like a man carving a Thanksgiving turkey, was practically vibrating with anger. Watching him was like watching a calculator burst into flames. He didn't just debunk Trump's claims, he demolished the entire circus tent Trump is trying to prop up. And here's the kicker. Trump is selling this disaster as a comeback, as a victory, as America regaining its greatness. Leisman calmly pointed out the reality: higher prices, collapsing supply chains, spiking inflation, and working families crushed under tariffs they had no say in. And where were the supposed business geniuses? Leisman asked, where's Jamie Dimon? Where's Brian Moynihan? Where are the leaders of Wall Street standing up to say this is madness?
That now I'm going to say famous poster board, and I'm looking at those tariffs. I'm like, wait a second. I don't know the tariffs like an encyclopedia, but I'm pretty sure European tariffs are not 39%. I think I know that countries like Switzerland have like almost no tariffs, and Singapore, I think the European tariffs are like 4%. And like, where are these numbers coming from? I get offset and I start getting emails from the economists and the international trade experts I know. And they're like, what the heck are those numbers? And nobody really understood where those numbers came from. And I think David said like at 5:30 or so, somebody who was not in the international trade community because they couldn't understand it, started doing the math. And it is what Sarah was saying earlier. It's the trade deficit, half of the trade deficit divided by the imports. Now, let me.
Spoiler alert, they're hiding under their desks, praying Trump doesn't crash the entire economy again before lunch. Because here's the brutal truth, Trump's tariffs don't punish China. They punish you. You, the consumer. You, the worker. You, the family trying to buy groceries while your paycheck gets smaller and your bills get bigger. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Leisman pointed out Trump's ultimate economic magic trick, promising to cut taxes, spend trillions, and eliminate debt all at once. It's like promising to lose weight by eating triple cheeseburgers and sleeping through workouts. It's a fantasy. And worse, it's a dangerous one. Trump thinks he's playing 4D chess with the global economy. In reality, he's flipping the board, setting it on fire, and blaming the smoke on the deep state.
Quite remarkable about the president is this idea of saying that we are being taken advantage of. We're somehow
in some instances
country.
we are.
In some instances we are. But look, what about the people that moved all their stuff to Vietnam? Remember when I was reading those USTR comments? They're like, hey, we went to Vietnam because you told us to go to Vietnam.
China. Right,
and then they put it on Cambodia. Interestingly, those guys, I don't have that wall back home, which is that great wall with all those tariffs on it.
We can put up something like that.
40 to 50%, according to trade experts, is not a tariff. It's a shutdown. It's, you just don't.
Meanwhile, Caitlin Collins from CNN showed up to finish what Leisman started. Like a human truth-seeking missile, she tore into Trump's rambling defenses about tariffs, war plans, and his endless attempts to dodge responsibility. Trump flailed. Collins pressed harder. Trump gaslit. Collins countered with receipts. It was a public undressing of a man who can't survive without his golden parachute of lies. She didn't just poke holes in Trump's talking points. She popped the whole inflatable Trump ego balloon with a single relentless barrage of facts. Trump tried everything, blaming the media, blaming Biden, blaming imaginary enemies. Collins didn't blink. She dragged him back to reality like a kindergarten teacher dealing with a tantruming child who insists chocolate milk is a vegetable. By the end of the night, Trump looked like he'd been hit by an economic hurricane and a journalistic freight train at the same time.
Gone after the legal firms. He's gone after the universities. They don't want him to go out. Look, they have a lot at stake. I don't judge them, but it just strikes me that at some point, somebody with some authority has to step up and say, this is not the way to do things. I mean, look, Nicole, this was another day in financial markets in Trump's America. He turned around and he hit the ball squarely into his own goal. And he scored another own goal. This did not have to happen today. We ended up down 900 and something points on the Dow Jones. We were off as much as 1,200, and it really looks directly related to his comments and fears that the president is going to potentially.
Leisman torched his policies, Collins torched his credibility, and all Trump had left was a sweaty brow, a handful of rage tweets, and the lingering smell of a scorched reputation. And guess what? This was just a normal Tuesday in Trump's America 2.0. The terrifying part? Trump's die-hard supporters will still cheer like he just invented sliced bread. They'll hear tariffs and think winning, while their Amazon orders double in price and their grocery bills explode. Because in Trump's world, facts are fake, lies are loyalty, and bankruptcy is just negotiating. Steve Leisman didn't just destroy Trump's tariff plan. He reminded everyone that the emperor has no clothes, and no calculator, no clue, and no exit strategy. And Caitlin Collins? She lit the remains on fire. If this is the future of Trump's economic vision, stock up on canned goods, folks.
Moving the tax system, like if these are tax cuts, they are de facto tax cuts for the wealthy, paid for by the poor, because they are terribly regressive taxes. Two reasons. One is that they end up paying, poor people buy the cheaper goods that are imported, and second of all, it's a bigger share of.
It's going to be a bumpy ride, because if Trump's plan is make America great again, someone forgot to tell him that tanking the dollar, strangling trade, and pushing inflation to Saturn's orbit is not exactly the blueprint for greatness. It's more like a blueprint for economic self-sabotage, and he's proudly signing it in gold Sharpie like it's the new Declaration of Independence. And while the economy crumbles under the weight of his Fantasyland economics, Trump will do what he always does: blame everyone else. The Fed, crooked; Wall Street, unfair; global trade partners, enemies; his advisors, disloyal; his reflection, probably deep state too.
I'm going to say this at risk of my job, Kelly, but what President Trump is doing is insane. It is absolutely insane. It is about the 8th reason we've had for the tariffs, and now he's saying he's putting 50% tariffs on Canada unless they agree to become the 51st state.
But here's the real danger. It's not just Trump screaming into the void anymore. It's a whole ecosystem now. Cable networks, right-wing influencers, and political yes-men, all scrambling to spin this economic faceplant into a masterpiece. They're already warming up with phrases like tough love for China and bold American revival, pretending that torching the supply chain and nuking consumer spending is some kind of 5D chess move. Meanwhile, Steve Liesman, armed with nothing more than facts, is out here playing whack-a-mole with every lie, every gaslight, every made-up stat Trump throws out like candy at a parade. Liesman didn't just slap down the nonsense, he dismantled it, disassembled it, bolt by bolt, then built a working model of reality for anyone still capable of understanding basic math. And then there's Caitlin Collins, standing cool and unbothered in the wreckage, tossing out another brutal question like a grenade every time Trump tried to reset the narrative.
And nobody ever heard of this formula. Nobody has ever used this formula. So I'm sorry, but the conclusion seems to be the president kind of made this up as he went along. He made up, and I think what Sarah was saying was interesting. There was an anticipation, okay, it was going to be reciprocal. These are off the charts and nowhere near what other countries.
Watching her face Trump's avalanche of word salad was like watching someone swat flies with sniper precision. Calm, surgical, deadly effective. Trump, meanwhile, stood there blustering, trying to pivot from economic suicide to how everyone says he's a genius dealmaker. A claim about as believable as him winning Father of the Year. And let's be real, if you handed Trump a map of the economy, he'd turn it upside down, declare victory, then charge you $49.99 for an autographed copy. This man couldn't balance a checkbook if the survival of Mar-a-Lago depended on it. But the most chilling part? Millions will still cheer. They'll still believe that making eggs cost $12 a carton is owning the libs. They'll still think paying 40% more for imported goods is economic patriotism. They'll still pretend that printing trillions while cutting taxes is somehow not how you destroy a currency. And Trump will bask in it, because for him, it was never about results. It was always about the show, the cameras, the rallies, the merch tables full of MAGA hats made in China.
She is reducing her estimate of imports by $900 billion, or nearly a third. Because these tariffs, if you look at the level of them, they're not like, oh, okay, this is an added cost. They're shut-off valve tariffs. They're tariffs that say you cannot import from these countries at 40 to 50%. So that's where we are right now. And you guys have been talking about all of the downgrades. I don't have a single forecaster saying, because of these tariffs, we are forecasting more U.S. growth, more employment, and lower inflation. Every forecaster is the opposite. Lower growth, higher inflation, less.
Meanwhile, the adults in the room, people like Liesman and Collins, are left holding the receipts, waving them around like, hello, does anyone else see this? But reality doesn't trend on Truth Social. Rage does. Fiction does. Delusion does. So while Trump crafts yet another economic fever dream, tariffs here, isolationism there, a trade war everywhere, the real world will keep bleeding. Prices will rise. Wages will stagnate. Families will hurt. And all the while, Trump will be standing on a stage somewhere shouting, it's working. Steve Liesman tried to warn America with spreadsheets, with history, with plain common sense. Caitlin Collins tried to hold Trump's feet to the fire with facts, logic, and undeniable evidence.
Go ahead. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CNN.
From the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, for the first time since it was revealed that he inadvertently added a reporter to a sensitive group chat about imminent attack plans in Yemen. Mike Waltz was seated at the table when we were inside the cabinet room here at the White House this afternoon as President Trump took questions and downplayed the severity of the potential national security implications of the fact that a reporter was able to see these war plans as they were being made and crafted by his top national security officials. The president instead insisted that there was no classified information included in that group chat, but when I asked him who told him there was no classified information in there, he declined to answer the question.
But Trump's already 3 conspiracy theories deep, halfway into blaming Canada for inflation and hinting that if things get bad enough, maybe we just annex Greenland and call it even. Welcome to the future of economic policy, brought to you by a guy who thinks tariffs are magic beans and recessions are just media hoaxes. Buckle up tighter, because if Trump gets another shot at the wheel, the crash won't just be spectacular, it'll be televised, monetized, and blamed on someone else. And judging by today's meltdown, the only safe investment left might just be canned beans, bottled water, and therapy sessions for when the stock market starts sounding like a bad EDM song. Stay tuned, the circus isn't over yet.
This has always been the case with him. The 8 years that I've covered him, he views foreign policy with a real estate lens there as well. I mean, his own advisors will acknowledge this. And he did it about North Korea. They talked about oceanfront property there, and if the Hermit Kingdom changed its ways and let people use internet. And that was how he viewed Gaza, which, I mean, it's safe to say. I talked to a bunch of Israeli officials that night and Republican sources of mine throughout the day. They do not see it that way, it's safe to say, but I mean, he's the president.
You held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
you
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Can you answer why you...
And if you're tired of watching this circus act crash the economy in slow motion, do something about it. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below telling us what you think about Trump's latest meltdown. Because the only thing more powerful than his ego is a crowd that's finally paying attention. Stay loud, stay smart, stay tuned.